Welcome to the Diary of Discovery, the podcast where we delve deep into the human experience of healing and transformation. I'm your host, Jacky, and each week we will sit down with inspiring individuals who have embarked on their own personal journeys of healing and self-discovery. From overcoming trauma to navigating life's challenges, our guests share their raw and honest stories, offering insights, wisdom, and hope to all who tune in. So grab your favorite cup of tea, find a cozy spot, and join us as we uncover the power of resilience, courage, and the pursuit of authenticity. This is the Diary of Discovery. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited to have the lovely Kate with us, and we're going to be talking about Kate's journey. But before we do that, Kate, can you please tell everyone who you are and where you are in the world?
Sure. So my name's Kate Kurdziej, and I live in Spain and I run my own business consultancy. I'm also a mum to a currently 4.5-year-old small terrorist that lives in my house. He's kind of the reason I started my business, which I'm sure we'll talk about today as well. So he keeps me busy in my spare time. Talking about spare time, I feel like I've come out of that sort of baby rearing mode, and I'm now in like I can't use him as an excuse anymore. So I've started exercising and taking better care of myself and my skin and my body and what I eat. And all of that kind of good stuff as well, which I'm more than happy to share today. So I live in sunny Spain, which I'm over the moon with the decision to move here. It was a bit of a journey from England through France to Spain. Stopped off in France for 2 years. But my husband and my son and I have settled into Spain, and we absolutely love it here, the outdoor life. We're not sort of people that we want to be flashy and have, massive cars or anything like that. I just want to be outside, in the sunshine at the beach, getting my feet in the sand. Like that's what makes me happy. So yeah, that's me. So my business consultancy is focused on operations. So that's sort of back office simplification, systemization, prioritizing, organizing, growing and scaling service-based businesses. That's what I've always done with my employed life, and now I do it for like mission-led women. I really want to help women that are in the weeds of it themselves behind the scenes, often a very similar story to myself, leaving a toxic workplace, rising childcare costs, and they're really trying to go it alone. And that sort of back operational guidance and like how to run a business isn't something that's in their skill set. And then you look around and you think, I don't know where to learn that. I don't know how to scale. I don't know how to delegate. I don't know all of these other skills that you need to run a business. And that's what I love seeing women transform into, these actual business owners. It's fabulous. So yeah, that's me. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's only a pleasure. I'm so excited for this conversation because I think that your story and my story resonate quite closely together. We both have gone through similar things, and I know obviously we've known each other for a while now in the online space. So it's really amazing to actually have this conversation. And I'm going to get you to take us right back to the start. So the moment that things fell apart, that you thought, I can't do this anymore, something's got to change. Take us back to there.
Okay, so when you say that, my moment that comes into my head was I was in my early 30s at that point, and I was living in England. I just got married, and I was hungry for more, like a better career. I was there in my sort of pre-kid era of like, how far can I get? And I took a job. I moved from the northeast of England. I was living near Durham, and I took a job in Yorkshire. And on paper, it was fantastic. It was practice manager of a wealth management company. It was very successful. And I thought, this is it. Like, this is the title. This is the kudos. This is the thing, that would make my family very proud of me. This is sort of on paper what I should be doing. And within the first day, I knew it was a terrible mistake. I had that sinking feeling the first day, and I thought, wow, me and my husband have moved. My husband's job wouldn't move with him, and he was currently looking for work. So it was all on me. And I thought, I can't quit because now I'm stuck. So I stuck it out for a good few months there. So I think I was there for 6 months or so. And during that time, I fell pregnant. My husband's a little bit older than me. We had no idea. It was the first time we'd sort of tried to get pregnant, and I'm one of the lucky ones, and I got pregnant straight away. And I thought, shit, like this, this wasn't the plan. Like I didn't really think past that point. And so I was going through sort of the first few months of pregnancy in a very toxic environment that I didn't want to be in. And I remember the moment that when you say like when does it all change? It was sort of starting to become a bit of a car crash, in the actual office itself. I wasn't doing well because I was so ill with the pregnancy as well. And I ended up on the phone to HR crying in a car park in my sort of 30s in my corporate wear. And I was just like, what am I doing with my life? Like this isn't like happiness. This isn't what it was supposed to be. And I was in therapy at the time as well because I was so sort of like, this is what it should be making me happy, but it's not. And I was trying to find these answers. And it was at that moment, I think, because I was pregnant, I actually think in hindsight, I might not have made the change if I wasn't pregnant. But I think sometimes, certainly for me, it's easier to help somebody else than it is to help yourself at that point. And I thought, I can't do this for another 5, 6 months to like grow a human, healthily and happily. This just isn't, I can't do it for another week, let alone another 6 months. So I quit, and it all sort of like came down in like a ball of fire. It was all very sort of dramatic. And the relief I felt when I got out of there, that was just like, this was totally the right decision. Luckily, at that point, my husband had been in a job for about a month or two, so there was still money coming in. And that was the sort of like, right, if one of us, we've always had it, like my husband and I have been together for a long, long time. And we've always had it where if like one of us is really unhappy, the other one will be the one working, and we sort of like step like that. So there's already always somewhere. And I acknowledge that that's like privilege for a lot of people, because if you are by yourself, you don't have that. But we are in that position that that's possible. So yeah, he was working at that point, and I just sort of was like, oh, I'm going to quit. I can't do this anymore. And yeah, that was sort of the moment, I think. And that was the first time that I think, made a decision that was potentially going to be seen as a decision to leave status or to leave career or to leave something that on paper should have been the thing that made you. It was actually that sort of realization of, that isn't bringing me happiness. Let's find something that is. Yeah, so that's my moment. I would say crying in the car on the phone to crying in the car park on the phone to HR, and I think that pretty much sums it up. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. It's so interesting because there's so many people that I talk to who say exactly the same thing. Like on paper, everything should have been right. On paper, they should have been happy. On paper, life should have been perfect. But actually, in reality, it just wasn't, and it was awful, and it didn't feel like it was supposed to. And,
Yeah.
it's this whole, I like that idea of like, it's the first time you've had to step away from status. I feel like that's a really big thing that a lot of people don't acknowledge when they're going on this journey, that there is a path that is designed for us by everyone around us, subconsciously. And the first time that you actually go, I'm not going to do that and I'm going to do something else, there is a massive shift in who you are as a person in that moment to actually say, like, I'm not doing this. I was literally telling somebody the story yesterday about how, like, at the age of 22, I had my whole life mapped out on like a 10-year spreadsheet. Like
Mm-hmm.
I
Oh.
knew exactly, we were going to buy these houses, we were going to be engaged by this point, we are going to be married by this point, we were going to have kids by this point, kid one, kid two, like literally the plan was so set in stone. And when I started going through my kind of healing journey and all of this trauma, suddenly I was like, I don't actually think I want any any of that. And it was such a wild experience to actually just step out and go, everything I thought I was supposed to want isn't what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And now what? Like, now what do I do? And how do I navigate this? So, what did you have to like embrace about yourself and figure out about yourself in order to go on this journey?
That's a really good question. So the one thing that attracted me to that particular job, if we take it back to that, was the status, was the sort of job title, but it was the money. It was like it was more money than I'd ever been paid. And I was sort of like, that's the career ladder, right? You get better job titles and you get more money. Sometimes you get more responsibility as well, but actually it's the status and the sort of finance that is linked to that. That you're right, society, that is the perception of success. And I think what I had to do was realize that, well, I went to statutory UK MAP pay, which is nothing. It's like, 600 quid a month, I think it was at that point. Um, and I went from multiple thousands that, more than I'd ever made, and with commission on top, to just statutory MAP pay. But the relief that I felt that that was the right decision. And again, we had family income coming in because my husband was working, but it was that sort of, okay, well, status and money hasn't made me happy, which I thought it would, because that's what we're told will make us happy. So what will actually make me happy? And that decision sort of got put on hold because COVID happened in 2020. My son was born early, literally like 2 weeks into the first lockdown, when the roads were empty and Boris Johnson was on TV telling us all to stay home. The really sort of like, what is the world like? What is going to happen? My waters broke early, and I went into labour. And that decision sort of was like, work was far from my mind at that point. Luckily, my husband, he planned to take a couple of weeks paternity leave and ended up working from home for quite a lot. So on a very personal level, the sort of the birth was its own trauma in itself, but the sort of a couple of months after that, it was very much like we were in our bubble because everyone was in bubbles. We didn't have any family around because we just moved to a relatively new area to us. And we had nobody, but it was like my husband was working from home. So it was just us three at that point. So I did have a bit of time at that point to start exploring what I wanted to do. And UK MAP pay only lasts for a certain amount of time. So I knew that that week would come, my final payment would come. And I was thinking, I don't have a job to go back to because I quit in an absolute shit show. So I don't have anywhere to go back to, nor do I want to really start full-time work again, which I think a lot of, mothers go through that experience of actually, that's not what I want anymore, which is why you get a lot starting their own businesses. And I thought, even then, like, do I want to work for somebody else? Like, surely this is the golden opportunity. And I remember my husband asking me, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to start my own business. And he was like, do it. Because you'll literally never get this opportunity again where the world is online. You want to work online. You're at home all the time. Yes, we've got our son, but there's two of us because of lockdown, and it was like this sort of like all the stars aligned. And I was like, I'm just going to do it and see what happens. And yeah, learning about sort of the business world. And I've always said, like, owning a business is like the best personal development that you can go on, because you need to be visible, you need to be confident, you need to show up, you need to be resilient, you need to be all of these words that we want to be. But we've also got the flexibility and the freedom to choose what kind of business we run as well. So there's a lot of big questions that go on when you start a business. But it was it was like the best decision that I could have made at that point. And over 4 years later now, we're going strong. Like, I'm the sole earner. Like, weirdly, I'm the sole earner again, but out of choice. Like, my business supports my whole family. Not like not like back in the day when I was, crying on the phone in the car park, because it's like that was a situation that had been created without any of my input. Whereas now this is a situation which I have designed. And I think learning what makes you happy is really important, especially when you bring it in a business, because I don't want to be at my desk 8 hours a day. I've moved to Spain. I want to be outside as much as possible. I want to work from my balcony. I don't want to need two screens and a mouse. I want to just be able to use Slack on my phone and walk down the beach. Like, these sorts of things you can sort of learn as you go. And I think learning what your day-to-day life looks like, rather than those big picture goals of, I want to make 100K. I want to grow a massive team. And it's like, you probably don't want to grow a massive team, because the amount of women that I do support, it's like team is one of the biggest stresses for them. So it's like, do you actually want to grow a team, or do you want the status that comes from saying that you've got a big team? And all of these things that you have to work out along the way, that's probably my biggest learning, is what makes you happy and how can you create that life to support that on an ongoing basis.
I love that. I literally always say to people, I would rather spend an afternoon lying in my hammock than be sitting at my desk. And this is why I think I'm unemployable nowadays.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I wouldn't want to have to go somewhere and do things. And this
Yeah.
morning, we literally had our first swim of the summer season in South Africa. The pool is still freezing. We were in for like maybe 3 minutes at a maximum. But it was just so nice to be able to just say to my husband, like, let's just jump in the pool. Like, we've just taken the dogs for a walk. We like, gotten home, jumped in the pool, had some breakfast, like so slow and so lovely. And my husband isn't completely retired yet. He's semi-retired, which is wonderful. But it's so interesting when you shift exactly like you said, like what does happiness actually mean? And for us, it was mortgage paid off, debts paid off, savings in the bank, and then enough money to live the life that we want to live. And
Yeah.
that is way smaller than we ever thought when we first started. Like when we first started, it was always buying a bigger house, buying a newer car, buying this, buying that. And now we're just like, actually, we don't want any of that stuff. We just want to enjoy each other's company and exist really happily. And I think so many people go on that journey, and more are going on it now, like definitely in the shift away from all of the material and all of the like status and all of the things, as you said, that are supposed to make us happy that just genuinely don't.
Mhm.
So I think that that's really incredible. But I always like to ask people, were there any moments where you thought that you wouldn't make it? Because starting your own business is hard, having a new baby is hard, being in COVID was hard, moving and relocating country is hard. I speak
Mhm.
from experience. So, like, were there moments where you were just like, what have I done? Like, why did I choose this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like on a weekly, sometimes daily basis. And I think that never stops. Like, I think as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you question yourself all the time, mainly because you're always in your own head, especially if you work online a lot. Like there's not a lot of external input that we get. So I think you're left to your own devices quite a lot. And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's not. And you can focus on the negatives quite a lot. I go through periods where I don't have any inquiries or there's nothing going on, and that's when I start thinking, oh my God, I'm the sole income earner in the house. Like that is a problem for me. And then it's like, okay, how do I solve the problem? So it's sort of a yes. Short answer is all the time. That happens all the time, and I don't think it's something that you ever get away from so much. Specific points where I've thought, oh my God, like what am I doing? Often, and certainly in the early couple of years, it was when I was completely over capacity and I'd said yes to too many people, because I was probably so worried about saying no and thinking, well, if I don't take that job on, then what if my business fails and I've said no to the money? And I think that's true in the early few years. You say yes to everything. And I think you should to a certain extent. There are a lot of coaches and advisors that might say only work with aligned clients and stuff like that. Well, we don't always have that opportunity or privilege to be able to do that. We always have to pay our bills. There's certain things that we have to do. Also, I think that sometimes working with people that aren't aligned or aren't a good fit, you learn a lot more about the clients that you do want to work with and a lot more about yourself. And it often opens up operational gaps in your own business of like, I could have done that better. I've just been lucky that my clients have never asked me that before. But actually, this person has just shone a light on, wow, there's a huge section of my business where I could be doing much better. So I don't think it's always a bad thing working with like non-good fit clients. But as we progress through our business and close those gaps, there's no need to, essentially, if you get your lead generation right. But I think the times where I've said yes to too many people is probably out of fear that I have to say yes to everything. And just, going completely over my own capacity to the point where I'm like, I could just work 9 till 5 and clock off. And I'm still working, late into the evening or at weekends, or I'm meant to be with my son, but I'm having to say to my husband, can you actually just take him a little bit longer this afternoon because I need to do something else? And it's those sorts of things where I started to think, like, what am I doing? Like, this isn't the life that I'm trying to create by not seeing my child, not going swimming with him in the afternoon. Like, that's the opposite of what I ever wanted. So yeah, those moments where I think as soon as you think it would be easier to get a regular job, that's when you have to start questioning what is it in your business that isn't aligned at that point, and try and fix it. Because there's usually a fix for pretty much everything, whether it's the kind of client, the kind of service, the way that you're working, your boundaries, anything like that. There's usually a fix for it, but it's really trying to work out what is it that's so tough at that point. And yeah, there's been many a moment like that, Jacky.
It's always reassuring to hear other business owners say that. And I love asking this when we do the podcast, because I think for anybody who's sitting in a moment of struggle right now, just hearing that makes them feel better. Just hearing that makes them feel like, oh, actually, it's not all lost. I could potentially do this. And like I always go through and think about, like, I've overcapacity in the beginning was my favorite thing to do, exactly the same reasons. What if nobody else comes along after this person? I need to say yes. Oh my gosh. Having clients that are bad fits. We've all done that. Like, it's a definite. But I think the really, really interesting thing for me is that idea of, like, when you start questioning whether you should just get a job, something is not right in your business. And a lot of the time, I always find that it's the way people are doing it. They're trying to do it like somebody else. They're
Mm,
trying to steal somebody else's online strategy and do it as like a carbon copy of what somebody else is doing.
mm,
And that never works. Like, me and you both know this as people who do strategy. There is not one strategy that fits every business. Yes,
mm,
there might be, systems that fit most businesses, but there's always outliers and there's always processes. And I think a lot of people in the online space are fooled into this idea that, like, the only way to grow is social media. You have to go viral. Like, if you're not dancing on Instagram or TikTok, you're not doing it right. Like,
mm,
all of these things are just really kind of force fed in the online space, can really make people feel like they're doing it wrong
mm,
and they're not getting it right. And I think it's so nice for people to hear, like, actually, it doesn't have to be like that. There are different ways. You know, we can do it in a way that suits us. Like, we can automate our businesses, we can build systems. Like, there's so many incredible things that we can do to make it easier. But I do like that concept of, like, sometimes you have to get it wrong in order to realize what you need to build to get it right. Like,
yeah.
you can't just sit on day one and go, this is the perfect business, and just build it and everything
Yeah.
works. Like,
And
if
actually,
business
I've
was
got
that
an
easy.
100%, I've got an example for you, is that I sort of fell onto Instagram and I happened to meet a couple of clients that I still work with to this day. And, it's, I feel like my business, maybe it wasn't luck, maybe I did do the right thing at the right time, who knows? But it felt like, certainly in the early days, I never struggled for clients, which I'm very happy to say that that has never been my problem. But I have gone through seasons in my business where I have felt really like I say, the inquiries aren't coming in. And I suddenly realized I never learned how to market my business. The clients just came to me. And actually, the like I would identify as sort of a high functioning anxiety, definitely like high achiever issues that I have to sort of really manage. And I realized there's this huge skills gap of marketing, sales and marketing, which obviously, I've been doing this for over 4 years now. It's gotten better. And I would still say that's the my area of weakness, but it's much better than where it was. And it's something that I continuously invest in and improve because I want to learn how to do it. But there's quite a vulnerability in running a business because it does shine a light on, like, wow, maybe you have a confidence issue and you're not willing to put your face on camera. That happens to a lot of people, certainly a lot of women that aren't used to being front and center. And that's very sort of what's the word? Yeah, the vulnerability is definitely there. And I had it recently when I spoke on stage for the first time at a big conference. And it was amazing and I loved it. But I had a sort of like literally probably just a second when I stood on stage after I'd introduced myself and I was talking. And as I was talking, I looked around the room and realized how many people were looking at me. And I would say like I'm pretty confident. I'm used to training. I'm used to sort of doing that sort of thing. I used to be a teacher as well. So like I'm not like unfamiliar with that sort of environment. But speaking on a stage into a mic, looking at screens, having over 100 people in front of me, a full AV team, I had this moment of and I felt my breath sort of like leave me a little bit. And I was like, wow, this is next level. And I've never felt that online because I'm quite happy talking to a camera. But if I put that into like, well, other people feel that when they just need to speak on Instagram stories to sell something. I'm like, God, imagine coming up against that every day. Like, what a lot of personal development work that you have to do to either get comfortable with it or find a different way to market. Like you say, there's always, there's different ways to do stuff. But I think having an awareness of something and then finding a solution to it, especially when it's opening you up to quite a like, oh wow, I'm really underconfident in something, or I actually don't have any skills in marketing, or people just ghost me. And it's like um that's quite challenging to take as one person, I think, especially when there might be a couple of skills gaps in your business, that's happening simultaneously. You do have to develop a bit of a thick skin in business. And something, talking about journey, like something that I've worked on really hard is trying to detach myself from my business. My business is doing well and it makes me feel good. But when it's not doing well, or I'm not attracting clients in, or something's happening that I'm not happy with, I do find it a direct representation of myself. And I take it really deeply. Like I'm quite empathetic anyway, and I'm a deep feeler. So I really feel that. I feel like everybody doesn't want to work with me and they're gonna, all of these sort of like negative emotions that start swirling around your head, and actually working on separating that. It's still a journey that I'm on and it's something that I'm better at, but that for me is something that I have to work at.
Oh, absolutely. And I think everyone does, like whether you run a business or you work in employment or you are studying or, no matter what you're doing, there's always going to be that level of having to detach from the result that you get and it not having anything to do with you. I think it's just heightened when you're in a business
Mhm.
because we're attaching a monetary outcome to the thing. And as you said, like being the sole earner, you look at that and you go, there's an actual like life and death nervous system response here.
Yeah.
And even though we kind of look at that and we go, well, it's not life or death really, but your nervous system doesn't know that. Your nervous system just says like, this is, the biggest thing in the world.
Mhm.
And it's exactly the same as you said when people have to step out and start recording themselves or, putting out social media posts. I remember the very first time that I shared a social media post about the fact that I had depression,
Mhm.
I felt literally sick. I felt literally sick and I was like, and the logic in my brain was like everyone in the world is going to see this, even though my posts at that point were only being seen by like 100 people. It's like everyone's gonna know. Like I was like so freaked out. And it's been such an interesting journey starting the podcast. And even when I started the podcast, in the very first episode that we had put out, so we did like 3 episode recorded, and one of the guests we had was Holly, who you know as well. And we were talking about something on the podcast, and I shared something that I'd actually never said out loud before to anybody except for my husband. And then I suddenly was sitting there going, now I'm gonna have to put this out into the world. I've like raved about the fact that I'm starting a podcast to everybody I know, and everyone is so excited. Like my mum, my dad, my sisters, like everyone's so excited to listen to this thing. And I was suddenly like, oh, now I feel super vulnerable. Like now I feel super vulnerable. And it was really interesting to see people's responses to that. And, some people were absolutely fine. Other people kind of messaged me and were like, I'm sorry that you felt that way and that, you were going through that and you didn't feel like you could talk to us. Like there was such a mixed bag of responses from people, but it was such an interesting journey to go through. And like I had done so much healing work by the time I started the podcast that I was like, oh yeah, this will be fine.
Mhm.
And then to feel that like crippling anxiety again just before going live, like it's just that reminder that like you almost go through the same things just like in phases, and you just go deeper and deeper every single time as you kind of go on that journey. And I guess my kind of question for you is what was the biggest like outlook change in what you believed or how you showed up in the world? Like what was the biggest outlook change for you as you went through this journey?
I think a lot of it was about priorities, and what you actually want in your day to day. I was talking to someone about this the other day, somebody that was like thinking about moving abroad. And I've wanted so I live in Spain now, but I wanted since I was a little girl going on family holidays to France to move to France. I like did French exchanges, went to France every single year. Like I speak fluent French, studied French at uni for a bit, like met my husband in France, we got married in France. Like the plan was to always raise a family in France. So when COVID happened, my son was just over a year old. And, we had some tragic losses during COVID as well. And we had a bit of like YOLO of like, now's the time. Like, let's just go. Like, it was a bit of a mess post Brexit at that point. We had to do visas, but we just sort of thought like, it's now or never. Like, our son Oliver is tiny still. He doesn't even know, which country he's in. So let's just do it. So we did it, and then we moved. So we got to France, sold our house in England, packed up, moved to France, and we sort of didn't really think past the move to France. It was more of like moving to France had been the goal for like decades. Me personally, probably nearly 3 decades at that point that I'd wanted to move to France. And I'd lived there and I've worked there. It wasn't the first time that I'd lived there, but a proper permanent move that we hadn't really thought past well, what will our day-to-day life look like? And so this was what I was telling somebody in this conversation who was moving abroad. I was like, don't just look at, watch Place in the Sun and think, oh, I'm going to be drinking rosé on my terrace with all my friends every day. It's like you're not, because you're going to have to work. You've got the school run. You're going to have to go grocery shopping, like all of these really boring things, deal with the paperwork of that country. And all of those little things aren't drinking rosé on your terrace, looking at sunflowers. Like that's just normal life. And you're going to have that normal life everywhere that you live. So what is it that you actually want your day-to-day life to look like? So when we moved to France, we wanted friends. We wanted a life for our son to grow up, playing out in the street with his friends, running across farm fields because we lived quite rurally. There was no kids around, because what we hadn't kind of realized is that where we were living in France and generally across rural areas of most countries, there's no people anymore. All the young families have moved to cities for work because there's no work anymore. So we sort of hadn't thought past that. And we were both working remotely, my husband and I had my business at that point. And we did 2 years there. We did 2 long, very cold winters there, and had a lovely time in the summer. But we were like, we're not happy with our day to day. We didn't really think past that goal of move to France, or maybe it's set up a business or make 100K, a year. What is the actual thing that happens after that? What is the happiness that comes from that goal? And we hadn't thought past that. And I think that was quite a realization at that point. And we just sort of looked at each other and thought, well, we don't like the cold winters anymore. We want more life. We want to be going out in the evenings, going to restaurants. I love the sea. Like my heart lives in the sea and the coastline. So we were like, well, should we move to the coast in France and blah, blah, blah. And then we just thought, well, my business supports us. I can literally work anywhere now. So we've just put a pin in the map, Googled some, my son was having some speech and language issues in France. So we wanted a British language school. And a few months later, we rocked up in Spain and have been here for over a year now, but living the life that we want to live. So we did very similar to you. We were renting this massive farmhouse in France, costing us a fortune every month, huge place. own swimming pool. There was like a ruin in the garden. The garden was so big. It was like, it was gorgeous, but again, freezing in the winter. And we never quite bought somewhere. We'd sold our place in England and we never quite committed. We put an offer in on a house at one point in France. Very glad it didn't go through because it wasn't the right place for us in the end. Um, and we ended up buying a very small but perfectly formed little two-bed place in Spain. We live 10 minutes from one of the most beautiful beaches that way. 10 minutes from there. It's one of the most desirable places in Spain. It's got two lovely international schools. My son's school has 52 nationalities in it, which for me is like, that's amazing because like my husband and I have lived all over the world and like that's what we wanted. We want that sort of like mixed cultural background for him. And yeah, we bought our house outright because we didn't want the mortgage payment anymore. So you like we were talking about status earlier, and it's like the job, the money, the big house, the car. We went from two cars to one car. We've got a small house, but I love it. I love it more than any of the houses that we've lived in. And we don't have that pressure of the mortgage payments anymore behind us, which was never like pressure, 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 but it's there every month and you have to pay it. So all of that sort of detail of like, what do you actually want your house, what do you actually want your life to look like on a day-to-day basis? And it's like, I'd rather go out to eat in the evening whenever I wanted than think about the mortgage. I would rather finish work at 3 and go pick my son up every day than make twice as much as I do, but never see him. So, it's all of those sort of like little things of like seeing his little face run out the school playground at me, that's the best thing ever. And it's like, why would I drop that for something else? And it's like those little moments in your day, like what do you actually want your day to look like? And yeah, I don't get it right every day. And there's definitely room for improvement on some things, but compared to a life that I could have had somewhere else with different priorities, like this is what I want. And it might not be what somebody else wants, but I think working out what it is that you want, and that can be quite challenging. I remember I was working with a marketing coach a little while ago, and she said to me, "What's your mission? What do you believe?" And I was like, and I remember going away from that call, and I was really upset, Jacky, because I was like, I don't know what I believe. Like, I don't know. I think I was at a place in my life and my business where I was like, I feel really pressured, like on top of me. I probably said yes to too many clients, too many things. And I just sort of thought, like, I don't know what I believe anymore. I don't know what I want. And actually that realization was very upsetting for me, but it was a good thing because that sort of was the catalyst to the life that I now live. And I think if you can be resilient enough to expose yourself in a non-naked way, expose yourself to those questions, find the answers, and then actually act on it and do the difficult thing, move country, break up with somebody, do the thing that you need to do to get to the other side of that. That is amazing. And I'm always in sort of awe of people that do manage to build a life that they're genuinely happy with, because I think so many people aren't. And you see that quite a lot with people. And I just think like, I get it a lot with people being like, they want to move abroad. And I'm sort of like the go-to now of like, oh, go and talk to that girl, Kate, she's moved abroad. And they just say, oh yeah, but I can't. And my question is, why can't you? Like, why can't you? And I'm not saying like everyone should move abroad, but that's always the question is, well, why not? Like, what are you putting in front of yourself to stop you from doing that thing? So whether it's start a business, move abroad, do whatever it is that you want to do, quit the job, like what is it that you want to do? And I think that's a difficult question quite often. But one when you do find the answer or certainly work towards the answer is liberating.
Oh, absolutely. I remember right at the beginning of my healing journey, I had a kind of very similar epiphany moment as you. In I was working with a coach, and she said to me, like, you're burning yourself out because you're doing too much, but because you're not doing enough of the things that you love doing. And she was like, so I want you to go away and I want you to write a list of all the things that you love doing. And I literally sat and just cried at a blank piece of paper because I was like, I don't actually know what I like doing. I just go with the flow of everyone around me and just, I have no idea. And then it was really interesting. Myself and my older sister had like this massive conversation. We came up with this idea of basically dating myself.
Mm.
So I would take myself out on dates every
Yeah.
single like week or month, depending on what was going on. And I would always go and do different things that I'd never done before. And sometimes it would just be me, and sometimes it would be like me and friends going on little adventures and doing different things. And it was so interesting because the more that I did things, the more that I was like hardcore, like, yes, I love that, or no, I absolutely don't. And it
Mhm.
was so nice to actually just go on that discovery journey and actually figure out what was important to me.
Mhm.
And in exactly the same way as you're saying, you get to the point where you ask yourself, what do I want my days to look like? Like,
Mhm.
I feel like that is such a deep level of discovery when
Mhm.
you stop thinking about what do I want people to look at and see, what
Mhm.
do I want people to think of me, versus actually how do I want to exist? And like I remember saying to my husband, like, we leave the UK, we move back to South Africa, we pay off the mortgage, we both work part-time, we have slow mornings, we finish early enough that we can go run. Like, we're training for an ultra marathon. It's impossible to work full-time, have a social life, and train for an ultra marathon. I'm just going to put it out there. It's impossible. But actually being able to sit back and say we have time to do the things that we love, because we've put ourselves in this situation and we've asked ourselves these hard questions, and we've gone on this journey of figuring out how we make it possible. And we don't get it right all the time. There are still months when it's tight. Like, of course there are. It's the way that life works. There's surprise bills and, things happen. It's fine. But more than not, we are happy during the day. And I
Mhm.
think that that's the real big sign of like you're actually successful. Like, you're actually
Yeah.
successful when you're really actually enjoying
Yeah.
and like going on that journey. And I guess your journey kind of got you to the point of the clients that you serve and why you specifically chose that group of women, would you say?
I think so. And just to pick up on that, what like the success piece then. So I have clients that are one-to-one clients, and it's not coaching, it's consultancy, but it's not the done for you implementation. It's sort of more of the guidance of like the operational, what do you actually need in your business? So there's a lot of planning, strategy, KPIs, that sort of thing. And it's one-to-one, but we do have sort of a bit of a group thing going on with these women that are in the same container. And just for a bit of background there, so then I got them on a group call the other day, and I said to them, been doing a lot of sort of inner work around success and what is success at the moment. And I'd love to put that question to you. Like, what do you deem as success in your business, but in your life? Like, what does success look like to you? And the money was very low down the priority. It was always like enough money, good money, but like no one, I mean, I don't generally attract the women that are like aiming for multi seven figure businesses because they know that I'll be like, I'm not that bothered trying to get you there. But I want to help women make, a lot of money, but not at the what's the word? I can't think of the word, but not at the sort of
Sense.
yes of happiness and joy in your life. So these women were saying to me, one of them said her definition of success is not jumping around on Instagram reels when she's 55, like finding a better way to market her business and have success in her business that doesn't involve her. She felt like she was sort of selling her soul to social media. So getting that sort of thing in place. Another woman said that she wants, well, she already takes Fridays off, so never working Fridays. Being able to finish early if she wants to, and having a team beneath her. So she's an HR consultant, like having a team of sort of other people that can do the client work for her. So it doesn't always have to involve her. And she was like, it's not that I don't like what I'm doing. She was like, I love what I'm doing. I just don't want it always to be me. And it's like those little bits of success. And another lady said, when she goes out in the sunshine to like eat outside, she likes to eat outside, like go out in the sunshine. She was like, if it's really warm and I'm enjoying myself, I don't want to feel like I have to go back inside. She was like, I want to be able to feel like I can just go for a walk now and maybe do my work later. So she was like, it's not that I don't want to work, it's just that I don't want to have to work at certain times and have that flexibility. So a lot of it was around those really just the minutiae of what do you actually do in your day? What's the thing, like we always have those moments of when you work in an office or a corporate role, and you're looking out the window and you think, oh, it's so beautiful outside. And look, I wish I could go outside. I used to work in a call center for a few months. And I was like, I just hate my life. I hated my life at that point. But I was like, I just want to be outside. It's glorious. And I'm stuck in here. And it's like, but when you run your own business and you technically can set your own schedule and all this sort of stuff, it's like, so why are you making yourself sit behind your desk at this time? Why have we not designed a business where you don't need to do that? And it might be you need to pivot your services. It might be you need to recontract with your clients and make sure that you're not available during certain times, like all of these sorts of things. But the definition of success was really interesting. I just wanted to share that with you, that it's very similar of like, what does it actually look like? And for most people, the finance side of it is lower down. I think the first few years you feel like clients and finance is the priority. And then I tend to work with women that have come out the other side of that, very similar to me in that sense of like, yeah, we need a certain amount of money to live the lifestyle, but I'm much more interested in you taking time off and going on regular holidays and spending time with your kids if you've got kids, or if you've got horses, being able to actually go down to the stables and see to them yourself rather than pay somebody to go and do that. These are the things that actually bring you joy. So we need to make sure your business supports you to do that. And I think that's really interesting to know that there's almost like two camps now of like people that chase the money and people that are like, I'm going to chase the lifestyle and I need a certain amount of money to do that. But actually, that's not the priority in my life anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so interesting as well because I have this conversation with my clients all of the time, and we do like an actual sum where we figure out what they actually need to earn in their business in order to live the lifestyle that they want, run the business that they want, save for the future. Like, all of the things. We're not saying, don't earn a lot and scrimp by or anything like that. But that figure and how many sales somebody has to make in order to hit that figure always surprises people because it's lower than what they think. They
100%.
sit there and they think, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to get millions of clients to make this work. And then I was literally doing this sum with somebody the other day. She's just about to go on maternity leave. And she is looking at this like idea of how she gets more people into her membership. And we were going through this thing and I did the sums for her and I said to her, like, you would just need 80 people in this membership every single month to replace your highest earning cash month in your business, like since you started running it.
Mhm.
And she was like, what? Is that it? And I was like, yes, that's it.
Mhm.
And it's like, it's so mind blowing how the idea, so many people are stuck in this idea that to be a successful online business, you've got to do 10K months or, 6-figure years. Like a 6-figure year is still an £8,000 month.
Mhm.
And realistically, most people don't actually need to earn that much to live the life that they want to live.
No, no, and this is the thing, and I think it's exactly what you're saying, the understanding of what you actually need. And I think often when I speak about this, I'm always really careful to say like it's not that I'm anti you making money, because I love making money. Money's wonderful, but I'm much more interested in why you want to make more money, or like what are you going to do with that money? What is it going to buy you? Because if you're going to burn out to make 20K months, how about we see if you can actually live an amazing life on 10K a month or 8K a month, or just like you were saying, like what is the figure that you need, even if that includes a huge amount for just going shopping, going out to eat. It's not that we're saying like you have to have skeleton finances, but actually an understanding of what your life will look like. And I was talking to I had a one-to-one with one of my clients earlier, and we were going over her goals. We hadn't really written financial goals for that. We were focused on a certain part of her business. And I was like, do you think we need to do that? Like, let's talk about your finances. She was like, got loads of money. She was like, she's an accountant. This is why we didn't go over the finance side of things so much, because that's very much her area of expertise. But she was like, I just want to make sure that I'm using that money operationally for what will free me up, because I want to buy back my time now. And I was like, yeah, like this is what lights me up. I'd much rather help you buy back your time than make more money. And the two aren't mutually exclusive, of course. Like you can have both, and you can be exceptionally happy on 100K years, and you can be exceptionally sad on 100K years. Like it doesn't define you, but I think it's important to do the extra step of what will it actually do for me. And I remember when I had my first 5-figure month back in, oh, it was a couple of years ago now, it was probably one of the worst months in my business, like feeling wise, sort of like qualitative level. You know, the stats were off the chart. I'd launched a group thing, I was training people, and it was my first 5-figure cash month as well, not even sales, cash. And I was like, I'm miserable. And then I caught COVID. And I was like, this is just the worst thing. And of course they weren't linked, but I was like, it did bring me that realization of, okay, this is the first time I've done that, and that's what I feel like should be successful, but I don't feel successful right now. So what is it that will make me feel successful? And for me personally, it was reducing the done for you side of things, because I feel like I've sort of grown through that now, and I've found a different area of expertise with sort of the guidance of people and the advice. But you know, that's not something you can turn off straight away. You know, there's certain areas of your business that you have to transition through. And I think realizing what that looks like to you is a really important place to start. And then you can put a plan in place to get there. You know, this isn't like an overnight fix. You know, you have to sort of work through it. But I think if you know where you're headed, it's so much easier to have that happiness on a day-to-day basis of, okay, well, if I do done for you work, for example, then I'm tied into X amount of hours. That doesn't work for me with the lifestyle that I want to live anymore, and so on and so forth. So I think it's really eye-opening when you do start diving into what makes you happy. And like you say, like not knowing what makes you happy or what you like doing. Again, very sort of exposing, but actually that's now something that you can fix because you've shone a light on the fact that you don't know what that is. And I don't know about you, Jacky. I'd be interested to know, like, what did you find that did make you happy? Because when people ask me, I don't know quite often, but more recently, it's like, I want to get back to painting again because that's the thing that I always loved doing. Or I love going to the beach, and I've managed to move to the beach. And now I want to start doing the creative side of things again because I don't have time for creative stuff. So I want to make sure that I've got that in my diary. I just wondered, like, what did you find? Was it like childhood stuff again? Because I often find people go back to like the things that they enjoyed when they were free and didn't have responsibilities.
Um, a little bit, yes, but actually, no. A
Mm,
lot of the things were not. And so I grew up with dyslexia, and from a very young age, I put myself in a box of, oh, I can't do loads of things because I've got dyslexia, because I'm slower than everyone else, because. And actually, as I started to rediscover the world and decide what I wanted to do, and I had so much more confidence, obviously, in myself as a human being by this point, the things that used to seem really daunting and really scary
mhm,
just weren't anymore. So I remember growing up and I was like the non-sporty one. I danced. I used to do like 5, 6 hours of dancing a week when I was growing up,
mhm.
every single week. That was the thing that I did. And I still dance now, just in my kitchen, but I still dance, which I love. Um, but I was like the non-sporty, the non-athletic, like, didn't go swimming, didn't like things I couldn't see the bottom of. Like I was just scared of life. I was just scared of everything.
Mm,
And now we run, we hike. Like as I said, we're gonna do a 56K ultra marathon in the new year, which is mental but so exciting. We go paddleboarding. Like me paddleboarding in the ocean that has sharks in it blows my mind because I never thought that I would. We've done so many things that I would have never ever thought that I would do. But one of the biggest things that I figured out about myself is that I love new experiences. So I always look for new things. Like I bought a paint by numbers and I painted it like on a trip when we went away to Scotland. I bought a Highland coo and I painted it, and then my husband framed it for me, and it's on our wall now. And the last year I always pick a new skill to learn. So last year I did cake decorating. So for every single person's birthday that is in my life, they got some like dramatically decorated cake, which was just like loads of fun. So it's like it's always just how can I bring new things in, do things
mm,
that I don't normally. find new ways to support. I absolutely love doing like charity work. I'm on the committee at our running club. Like there were so many things that I found out about myself that I just never given myself the opportunity to explore. And I think
Hmm.
that that's the big shift is actually sitting down and saying, and the thing that you said about like, how do I buy myself more time
Hmm.
so that I can do all of these things? Like, I'm also a massive advocate for my clients of earning good money. Like, I don't want people to struggle. I don't want people to not be able to have the things that they want. And
Hmm.
I always say to people when they're doing their budget, do a budget of life now. Fine, you need that figure. But do a budget of you having a full-time cleaner, having a
Hmm.
full-time gardener, having somebody who comes and washes your windows, having a food delivery service, having I mean in the UK they've got those really cool, I can't remember what they're called, but they're like boxes where people send you clothes to try on and you can pick what you want to
Hmm.
keep. Like literally a personal shopper through an internet app. Like
Yeah.
build a life where all of that stuff is taken care of by somebody else and you don't have to do any of those remedial tasks. Like if you can build your life to that point where you buy yourself all of your free time because you can afford to pay for all of those things. And
Hmm.
I always say to my clients as well, like if you're sitting in your business thinking, I don't know what to outsource, I would outsource my cleaning, my cooking, my laundry, because those things will be the quickest way to buy yourself back time because you're not attached to how somebody does it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
That's
don't have
really
to
true.
teach somebody to do the job. You
Hmm.
just give them the job and let them do it, and they can just take that,
Yeah.
2 hours a week off your
Yeah.
hands, that you're
Yeah.
then buying yourself back that time. Like
That's
it's such a
really,
good way.
yeah, that's really interesting because like oftentimes like that's one of the things that I help my clients with is like what and how to successfully delegate because it's sometimes easy to come up with the what, but the actual how and the management of it is a skill to learn. So I think often with our own businesses, if it's just been you for a long time and you do everything in your head and you do everything across your business and you haven't got systems in place, you haven't got that second brain that lives somewhere that just gives you reminders of what to do next and prioritizes things and all of these sorts of things in place that actually it can be really tricky to work out what to outsource or to actually manage it effectively. So I think that's really great advice, Jacky. It's like you're probably not close to how do people do your laundry or how do people wash your windows. So that's a very easy task to delegate because it doesn't necessarily have to be your business. And what a wonderful thing to be able to do, like to actually be able to outsource all of those things that buy you back that extra half hour, that extra hour. And then before you know it, in a month, you've bought back days, maybe even a week of time. And then you've got the question of, well, what do you want to do with your time? What makes you happy? What do you actually want to do that brings you joy in your life? And I think if you don't know the answer to that, because that's where I was, that's okay. Because I think you've got to that point because you haven't done enough of it. Something else has got in the way, like work or, raising a family, or whatever the thing is that has stopped you from doing that. And quite often it starts with work. That becomes your hobby. And a lot of the time, like women get a little bit, there's an aspect of workaholism that comes in, and that perfectionism of wanting everything done absolutely spot on and not accepting anything less. So they just work and work and work and work and take time from the evenings and the weekends and borrowing it. And I just think, well, you wouldn't do that with finance. If you got to the end of your money every month, you wouldn't go take a 10K loan from a bank and just be like, "Meh, I'll just do that because I want to buy more stuff." But you're borrowing from your own time all the time, and that's not a sustainable way to work or live. To be able to continue relationships, husbands, friends, family, children, look after dogs, all of the other household stuff that you have to do as a fully grown adult, there's other responsibilities on you. It's like you need to try and put work not as the priority. And I think we often prioritize that. Certainly I've done that, and a lot of my clients are in that position where work is the only thing that they do. And finding, like you have, like other things to do that light you up is really important.
Absolutely. So, what would your advice be for somebody who's going on this journey, maybe feeling a little bit lost, maybe trying to find themselves, maybe trying to get back some of their time? What would your advice be? for somebody on their journey?
So pulling on my own experience, I would say buy yourself some time back in the first instance because you need space. These are very big questions. They are like fundamental to yourself as a human, which sounds really deep, but it's really true because this is the life that you're living, and before you know it, another year's gone by, another 5 years has gone by. So what do you actually want your life to look like? And you probably won't know the answer to that. So for me, it was actually creating some space around myself, telling my clients that I don't work Fridays anymore, booking some time off, really, really being careful with which clients I take on, what kind of projects, what kind of services that I'm working on, and getting some boundaries in place around current clients, but also just for myself of what I'm willing to accept and what I'm not willing to accept anymore. And getting yourself some headspace. So whether that is walking, whether that is listening to podcasts, whether that is just some space where you're not physically trying to be productive all the time, which is something that comes up a lot, that toxic productivity of always feeling like you have to be on. You're never really going to be able to create space for yourself if that's the routine that you're stuck in. So sort of creating intentional distance from your work, I think, is really important. That not only does that force the detachment a little bit, but allows you that sort of release. The feeling of like, if you do go on holiday, if you do manage to actually get a break from your business and you go on holiday, and, I always try and encourage my clients, don't take your laptop away with you, because then it's just there and it's so easy to open and it's so easy to just answer a quick message or just do that quick thing. But that feeling, Jacky, of like when you do have a couple of days where you think, I haven't thought about my business at all. And the sort of the release that you get and that burden that is suddenly lifted of like you feel so much lighter that you haven't been in that work mode and you've created some distance. And it's like, so how do you intentionally create that in your business? That's what I want people to create frequently. But certainly as you're going through that question of like, what is it that I want to do? Like, what is my journey now? Creating that intentional distance from your business is probably the first place that I would look to. And then the second thing is when you have worked out a little bit more of like, okay, this is what I want my day to look like. This is what I enjoy doing. This is what I want to make sure I have time for. Is to actually work out how to, I'm always going to come at it from an operational point of view, is how to facilitate that and actually how to do that. So do you need a team member? Do you need multiple team members? Do you actually need better systems, platforms, tech, automations? Do you need to have some business training and management training of how to actually run a business and not get caught up in the service delivery all the time and the client side of things, and how to actually drive your business forward on the sort of back end of it rather than get caught up in the day-to-day of it? So there's a lot of elements, and sometimes you just have to move through it in stages, I think. And as you finish one thing, you can then move on to, okay, how do I do that? And it's exactly the same if you work out your like capacity or workload. What is the amount of work that you should be doing client-wise that's billable, and what is the amount of work that you should be doing business admin-wise and operationally and marketing? And quite often when I do that, some with people, they're way over what they should be technically on their client sort of billable work of like, right, this is where I'm actually revenue generating activity, and this is non-revenue generating. And most of the time people come out with like way over where it should be, their sort of optimum percentage. And they're like, oh, no wonder I feel so completely overwhelmed with my life, because you physically can't, everyone has 24 hours in a day. If you have other responsibilities as well, you can't physically have that work expand into the other areas. And when it does, that creates pressure points and creates stress. So I think the first thing is creating space. Second thing is identifying what needs to change. Is it this clients, services, pricing? And all of those things are sort of intrinsically linked in your business. And then you can create that strategy to move forward. And I think just the awareness of that in the first instance is a good thing. Plus the awareness that it's not an overnight fix, that sort of thing. And I wish it was. I really wish I could wave a magic wand for my clients and just go, there you go, you've got the business of your dreams. But it takes dedication. And a lot of people get to this point in their business a couple of years in, for example, where they've finally got clients coming in, they're saying yes to everybody, they're feeling like they're teetering on burnout, and then people do burn out. or they might not burn out in the sort of medical sense, but they just think, I need to go back to a employed role because I don't want all this stress. I don't want to be showing up all the time. I want to do this. But if you can get to that point and work out the strategy to move forward through that, that's when you really develop into a business owner, I believe. And that's the transformation that I like to see when you can push through that, come out the other side and think, this is what I'm going to do. These are the lessons that I've learned, and this is how I'm going to run my business going forward. That's when, for me, the women that I work with really step into their power with that.
Oh, absolutely. It's most businesses in the first year don't succeed because they physically don't get enough business, they physically don't get enough money in. And if they manage to push through that because they've got another source of income, within the first 3 years, most business owners will burn out and will walk away from their business because it's too much of a hassle. If you show me a business owner that's been in business for more than 3 years, I know that that person has got some kind of resilience and grit to
Mm-hmm.
get through the really, really tough
Yeah.
times and actually sit down and create a plan and a strategy and a momentum of like, okay, actually, these are the things that aren't working. This is what I need to do differently.
Mm-hmm.
This is how I want my life to look. This is where I want
Yeah.
to go. And I think that it's it's the same even in that employed world as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can ask yourself the same questions being in that space
Mm-hmm.
of, how do I want to spend the time that I have? I know so many people who come to me and they want to leave their paid employment to obviously start their businesses. And they say to me, I have absolutely no time because they're treating their employed job as if it was their own business. And
Mm-hmm.
they're working, double the amount of time that they're actually contracted to work. And they're just trapped in the same trap that employed people get into when they do everything themselves. The only difference is that they're doing it for somebody else. So I
Mm-hmm.
think asking yourself those same questions, where do I buy my time back? What boundaries do I need to put in place? Like that can work whether somebody's employed, self-employed, studying, like no matter where you are in your life.
Yeah.
There's such a need for people to actually ask those questions. And one of the things I always say to my clients is that when you set a boundary, you're setting a boundary with yourself first and then everybody else second. Because if you don't enforce that boundary that you've set and said, this is what's important to me, if I've said I'm not going to work Fridays and then somebody arrives and they ask me to work a Friday and I go, oh, well, they asked, so I need to say yes, they've got no idea that I don't work Fridays. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't even told them the boundary for them to challenge it,
Mm-hmm.
which means that the problem isn't with them, the problem is with me. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a real piece around boundary work that I think a lot of business owners and just people, a woman especially in general, need to get better at in actually
Yeah.
showing up and doing that work.
Mm-hmm.
And so my final question for you, because I feel like me and you could literally talk all day if people let us, but we're gonna have to we're gonna have to wrap up.
Yeah.
So my final question for you is what is next on your healing journey? So it's always a journey. When you run a business, it's always a journey. So what's the next thing that you're working on, focusing on, trying to get better at? What does that look like for you?
So for me, that's a really good question, which no one's no one's really like asked me. So I don't really have like a formed answer on that, but I think doing more of what I'm doing at the moment, which is being very ruthless with the work I take on and being very clear with my clients what I do and what I don't do. And it's what I don't do that is the bit that we all have to step up and say, I don't do that. I'm not available at that point. Those sorts of questions. I've just started running. I ran my first business retreat in Spain, literally like 10 minutes from where I live. It was amazing and I loved it and learned so much. And the women had a brilliant time. Already got bookings for next September as well. And I think I want to do more of them because the magic in the retreat for me was, yes, there was goals and strategy and business conversation, and it's very much a business retreat rather than a wellness retreat or anything like that. Um, but it was actually seeing people get the space that they need, and then there was implementation time as well. So I'm very much like when you decide you want to do something or you create a plan, it's actually doing it. actually actioning it and implementing it. And I think that's where a lot of people fall down, is because there's that dopamine hit of creating the list, right? Or creating the strategy. The work is in actually doing it and sticking to it. And I think that's difficult for a lot of people. So that was the space that I loved creating. So I want to do definitely more of them. I maybe want to not necessarily bring in a wellness part of it, but because a lot of the women that I work with are similar age, late 30s, 40s, early 50s, that sort of like age bracket, there is an element of we need to take better care of ourselves as well. And I think as business owners, we give so much of ourselves to our business that we need to pour into our own cup as well. So making sure that that is weaved into it somehow too, I would love. I'm not sure what that's going to look like yet, but that's what I feel like that would make it even better. Just have that sort of like reducing stress side of it. And I'm not sure what that will be yet, but that was definitely like the next villa that we've got is overlooking the Mediterranean Sea, so we can hear the waves. And it's just, I feel like that will play a massive part in it as well. So the retreats, yes, definitely. I definitely want to do more speaking. However, I want to make sure, so playing into the lifestyle piece, is that I brought my husband and my son back to the UK with us when I was doing my speaking gig that I did. But that was quite like an upheaval, and there was a lot to go along with that as well. So making sure that the speaking that I do isn't taking me away from my son when he's still so young. And I'm not sure again how that's going to be possible yet, whether I just go back to online stuff for now or whether I do stuff, but maybe take my husband and son along with me for a longer period of time, so it's not so sort of like I have to leave him and do different things. So yeah, just sort of thinking what that looks like on a day-to-day sort of lifestyle piece, I think is really important. Exercising more. I want to start eating better as well. Like, don't eat terribly, but I think now I've started exercising again. That's the next piece of the puzzle. I think probably the short answer, Jacky, is just prioritizing myself, or continuing to prioritize myself so I can take care of everybody around me. And I think that's, as women, we're not so good at that. We usually put ourselves bottom, but I think that makes everything 10 times worse half the time. If we just put ourselves back at the top, not in every situation, but in a lot of situations, and just think, no, what do I need at this point to be able to help people in the longer run? And I think I'm probably at that point where I don't really know how to navigate that at the moment, but I'm doing little bits. I've the HIIT workouts that I do on a Monday morning, that's in a group, so I can talk to those women and see what else they do, and just sort of reintroduce myself to self-care, really. I think that's what I want to do. So I don't have any grand plans for world domination. I'm quite happy for organic growth and just feeling into what feels good at that point. And I think something that I wanted to sort of like tie up on and maybe finish on is the fact that as business owners, we have to adapt, and it's something that I've had to learn to do as well. And sometimes that means that you feel like you're constantly being put back at day one, because you're like, I don't know how people are buying differently. Oh my God, people are buying differently. How do I market to them? It's like sometimes you never quite feel like you crack it. So my sort of advice for people listening would be to find the joy in the journey, because you might never get to the real destination. And I don't know what that is, because I don't know what everyone's is going to look different, but finding the sort of joy in the journey of being an entrepreneur, or life in general, rather than pinning everything on the destination, sort of thinking I'll buy back my happiness later because it's going to come at the destination, because before you've got there, you've probably moved the goalposts already. So, feeling like you never get to that point is a really horrible feeling. So definitely something I've learned, something I will continue to do, is find the joy in the everyday, and actually getting there is the destination, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And what a beautiful note to end on. This has been incredible, Kate. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Thank you for giving us so much wisdom and so many insights and so many great things for people to take away and think about. As always, I will link you out to Kate in the show notes, so you can go and find her and talk to her and say hi over on her social media. But Kate, thank you so much again for being part of the show, and we've absolutely loved having you as a guest. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another inspiring episode of The Diary of Discovery. If you found value in today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends, family, or anyone else you think might benefit from the stories of hope and transformation. Your feedback means the absolute world to us, so please take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help us to reach even more listeners and continue to bring this meaningful content to the world. Until next time, remember, your healing journey is valid. You are never alone, and you have the strength to get through this. Keep shining bright, and we'll see you in the next episode of The Diary of Discovery.